Hello, everybody. My name is Graham Elwood, and you are watching The Political Vigilante. We are in our crazy road studio. I know it's a little bare bones, folks, but still wanted to give you some stories. So we're seeing more and more of these stories. I'm trying to talk about the environment at least once a week, if not more, because it's getting bad, right? Louisiana, all the way up the East Coast is flooding. The West Coast of the United States is all these fires. And we're seeing more stories like this. Rain fell on Greenland's ice sheet for the first time ever known. Alarms should ring. So this is, they talk about this. Last month, for the first time in recorded history, rain fell on the highest point of the Greenland ice sheet. It hardly made the news, but rain in a place historically defined by bitter cold portends a future that will alter coastlines around the world and drown entire cities. Okay, guys, I mean, I've talked about this before. We've done a story about a week or so ago on the sea levels and how they might have to evacuate Miami. We've talked about Florida before. I've shown you the NOAA website, the map, the map that shows the coastlines, the interactive map. That's the word I was looking for. So more of these stories keep popping up, and I'm going to show you a couple more. I mean, it's not just this one. So look at this. The Greenland ice sheet contains 4 times more ice than all of Earth's other glaciers and ice fields combined outside Antarctica. The largest island in the world, Greenland, is more than 36,000 times the size of Manhattan, and ice covers most of it, in many places thousands of feet thick. As carbon dioxide and methane accumulate in our atmosphere, causing our planet to heat, the 6 warmest years on record have been the last 6. Oh, I'm sure it's a wacky coincidence. And climate deniers are going to go, oh, we found this one doctor there's this one scientist with this one study saying it's not that. Okay. Greenland lost more ice in the past decade than it did in the previous century. Gee, I wonder if that has to do with any of the flooding and hurricanes we've had to deal with, any of the flooding all around the world that we've had to deal with. Massive summertime meltwater rivers now flow over the ice sheet, where in Nansen's time, no sign of surface water could be found. Nansen was that guy who skied across it or whatever. If the people of Miami, Shanghai, Tokyo, Mumbai, Lagos, Bangkok, and New York are not concerned, they should be. Miami's about 3 million people. Shanghai is, 20, 30 million people. Tokyo, I mean, these are massive cities. Mumbai, Bangkok, New York City, these are huge cities. We're talking about tens of millions of people just from these 7 cities. The Great Greenland Ice Melt is a complete climate crisis sword of Damocles for a coastal, low-lying, densely populated areas. No other single factor will probably contribute more to sea level rise over the next few decades. A consortium of climate scientists writing 2 years ago in Nature, a prestigious scientific journal, concluded that if Greenland continues to melt in one bad case scenario after another, tens of millions of people could be in danger of yearly flooding and displacement by 2030. Less than 9 years from now. Let's call it 8. And by the end of this century, when Antarctica, which contains vastly more ice than Greenland, also enters a phase of catastrophic melting, the number of annual flood-prone people could reach nearly 500 million. It's more than farewell, Miami. It's goodbye, Florida. The assumption that land will always last is no longer valid. Land is about the only thing that cannot fly away. Well, unless you're just Andrew Yang, just move to higher ground, that genius said. Isn't he great? A good example of what are the solutions here is Jason Box, who Jeff Goodell in his 2017 book, The Water Will Come, describes as a maverick scientist and Greenland ice junkie who got a lot of attention in 2012 when he publicly predicted just weeks before the summer melt season that Greenland would experience a record-breaking year for ice melt. Raised and educated in Colorado, Box suspected that soot from wildfires in the American West and Canada and from coal-fired power plants in the industrial north would enter the atmosphere and travel far. When it settled in Greenland, the suit would darken the ice sheet and make it absorb, not reflect, solar energy. It's part of the ice sheets have been reflecting this. That's what they're not doing that anymore. It would melt like gangbusters, which is exactly what happens. We predicted this. In 2014, Box was stunned to find the ice sheet so dark. He has since said that humanity's burning of fossil fuels has probably set in motion nearly 70 feet of sea level rise. 70 feet. A bold prediction and not out of character for Box, who has spent more than a year on the ice. Like ice because it's nature's thermometer, he told Goodell. It's not political. As the world heats up, ice melts. It's simple. It's the kind of science that everyone can understand. While science, endeavoring to avoid alarmism, can be overly cautious, science isn't the problem. Disinformation and lack of political will are the problems. It's crazy, but look at this. A Japanese island just disappeared into the Pacific Ocean. There's only one way to stop the inevitability of sea level rise. This is from a completely different article. This is from 2018, right? A small island off the northeast coast of Japan recently slipped under the waves, becoming the latest victim in rising sea levels. And Sabi Hanakita Kojima was uninhabited and spanned less than a mile. Its tiny size may explain why its disappearance went unnoticed for several weeks until the author Hiroshi Shimizu visited the town, which is on the island, to work on a sequel of a picture book of Japan and the Himalaya Islands. When he looked out of the Pacific Ocean, he noticed the island had vanished, and he alerted local fishing authorities who, after conducting a survey, agreed that it had been swallowed by the ocean. So that was from 2018, the Japanese island. Didn't make national news. What's happening in Greenland just happened, and no, there's no alarm bells. I mean, they're acting like, oh boy, we got to do something now that the East Coast and Louisiana is flooded. There's more hurricanes coming. It's hot and dry on the West Coast. There's more fires coming, probably. I hope not. I hope I'm wrong, but this is going to keep happening every fire season. It keeps getting worse and worse. The hurricanes, the flooding keeps getting worse and worse. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? Because there are solutions. I've talked about these solutions a lot, right? There's these solutions, and I want to show you this. We've talked about this a bunch. This is from TruthDig. Renewable energy could power the world by 2050. I think it could probably even do it sooner. It needs to do it sooner. But this is the consensus of 47 peer-reviewed research papers from 13 independent groups with a total of 91 authors that have been brought together by Stanford University in California. Some of the papers take the broad sweep across the world, adding together the potential for each technology to see if individual countries or whole regions could survive on renewables. Special examinations of small island states, sub-Saharan Africa, and individual countries like Germany look to see what are the barriers to progress and how they can be removed. In every case, the findings are that the technology exists to achieve 100% renewable power if the political will to achieve it can be mustered. It seems that every part of the world can now find a system that edges fossil fuels out in cost. So the solutions are there. That's always renewables are too expensive. Not anymore, because I've talked about this numerous times. Green energy is a technology. And like any technology, excuse me, it gets smaller, faster, right? This iPhone, right? This iPhone is infinitely better than 4 iPhones ago or whatever. I mean, this is more computer technology than what they used to land the man on the moon in 1969, right? So that's a lot of green energy. So And it's not just solar panels and wind turbines, it's hydroelectric, it's all different kinds of solutions. And as I say, every time I do a climate video, there's a lot of solutions that are already out there. They just need mass adoption. They just need mass scale. So, and if we don't do something about it, 70 feet of sea level rise. Now let's just say that, oh man, that scientist, he's overreacting. So let's cut it in half. 35 feet, that's going to flood Florida. That's going to flood all those cities we listed. Mumbai, Shanghai, cities with tens of millions of people in them. Manhattan, we're going to have to evacuate Manhattan. Let's say that guy's only 20% right. So it's only 14 feet. You know what a 14-foot sea level rise would look like? I don't know, maybe parts of LA are flooded. San Francisco's flooded. I mean, 14 feet is like devastating. I mean, 7 feet. Like I just keep cutting the number down. Oh, let's only say it's 10%. Even 7 feet is nuts. So anywhere from 7 feet and up is a disaster, a global disaster. And again, when you displace tens of millions of people, oh, well, they're just going to have to move inland. Everyone just like Andrew Yang, we'll just move to higher ground. Oh, wait, brilliant, Yang, you jackass. So what does that mean? So let's just say we take just Miami. We take the 3 million people that live in Miami, and where do they go? They go into new communities or smaller towns or whatever. So you have a bunch of people show up in a new small town, or we're going to move everybody to Nebraska and Iowa. Okay. So you take Lincoln, Nebraska, which has a population of probably a couple 100,000 people, and now it goes from, let's say, 200,000 people to 1 million people, or something like 800,000 people move to Lincoln. So any of these scenarios, millions of people, tens of millions of people have to move inland. Where's the schools, the infrastructure, the food supply, water, housing, hospitals, trash collection? I mean, on down the line. Where you can't just take Omaha, Nebraska, or Des Moines, Iowa, and just add 500,000 people to it and go, oh, we'll figure this will be fine. What are you going to do? And that's the plan? Just, oh, sorry, gang, everyone's got to do something. I mean, like, we need mass. Climate change cannot be fixed grassroots. It just can't, unfortunately. I wish it could. I would love it if it could. It's got to be a top-down solution, which means governments have to come in. I mean, we need to do everything. We need to get this. We need to do reef restoration. We need to put in all that stuff, like Lee Camp talked about it. In New Orleans, there's an all-natural occurring, I forget what it is, like a marine life, like marine plants or wildlife or whatever, that can absorb floodwater. And of course, the oil companies cut it down to make oil shipping lanes better, and that made Hurricane Katrina even worse, right? We talked about that on Government Secrets a couple episodes ago. So there's all these things we could be doing, because it's not going to be one thing. It's not going to be like, oh, more solar panels. It's going to be 100 things that need to be done. It's going to mean reef restoration. It's going to need like more wetlands or whatever to absorb the flooding. It's going to mean what can we do to lower CO2 so that the polar ice caps actually stop melting, and reverse that so they actually start to freeze up again. We need them to freeze up. It's going to be pulling the CO2 out of the air. And we've talked about that. We've talked about the algae that does that on this show. We've talked about the aloe vera, that mineral that you can put on a beach that would absorb CO2. And it's a process that occurs naturally over the span of 1,000 years. But you put that mineral on the beaches, it pulls it out of the air and buries it in the ocean, but it does it in about 2 years' time. So that mass efforts, what if we just did that at every beach in the world? Any sandy beach, we put that on there. How many jobs would that create, for starters? So we have to get inventive. We got to get all these scientists and researchers that already have these solutions out there, and they just need real money behind it and real backing. And we just need to say this needs to happen. Because if we don't, when we start evacuating these cities, then we're going to have to go, oh, gee, maybe we should do something about it. And building a wall like they were talking about doing with Miami. The Army Corps of Engineers was going to build a wall around Miami. That was going to prevent sea levels from rising. Well, they had to scrap that idea because somebody went, oh, by the way, Florida is limestone. So the water's just going to come up. You can't block it. And building seawalls is like such a, that's like, we should give kids bulletproof armor. That'll deal with the gun violence in schools. So it's coming. An island disappeared in Japan 3 years ago. We've got the flooding already here. Greenland is like, it's going to there's flooding in Manhattan. What are they going to just close the subways because of flooding? You just stop taking the subway in Manhattan? Is that what the solution is? Oh, just take the bus. Just don't go on the subway. We're just going to keep doing these like Band-Aid on shotgun wound things without dealing with the bigger problem. And the whole world could be on renewables by 2050, if not soon, to set an earlier goal than that. It's out there. The solutions are out there. There's cars that run on vegetable oil. That has been around for almost 100 years. Adolf Diesel created the diesel engine. There's engineering solutions out there. Why don't we spend the money, and rather than on laser guided missiles to blow up poor people, and how about we spend all that money at all the research and development, all the R&D at all the big defense contractors that have the state-of-the-art facilities and really good scientific brains, and why don't we focus on how to reverse climate change? Because if we don't, we're going to be doomed as a society, and it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to be really slow and awful, and our world is just going to get worse and worse. We're going to have hundreds of millions, if not billions, of climate refugees. That destabilizes governments. So we've talked about that before on this show, that the 5-year drought in Syria didn't create the civil war, but it made it worse because everybody from the rural areas moved into the cities like Aleppo, and that exacerbated the problem. So what do we do if 30, 40 million people from the East Coast have to move inland? What's that going to do? What do we do if the people of Shanghai can't go? Like Tokyo has flooded. Like where do they go? Japan's an island nation. Where do we go? Just whatever the 30, 40 million Japanese people, just what do they do? Build a boat? Like where's everyone going to go? So we better come up with some big solutions. They're out there. We just need political willpower to do it. But we'll see. If everyone just keeps complaining and fighting with each other like jackasses, then we'll all be dead. So it's up to you. Fight about dumb, petty nonsense, or get mad about masks or whatever, or realize that the planet's dying and we all need to do something about it. It's up to you. The species that don't evolve go extinct. So if we don't evolve as a species, the human race, we just fight with each other, and war and greed and stupidity and selfishness, and don't care about anybody but ourselves, then we'll all be dead. So have a good night. Shave your knuckles for justice. Boom. Hey, everybody. Ron Placone and I had to cancel all of our October tour dates because of COVID, the Delta variant, and all that. But we still have shows in California. Ron and I are doing San Francisco, September 11th, Sacramento, September 12th, Burbank, September 15th, and Lee Camp and I are doing Live Government Secrets, September 18th in Los Angeles. All those tour dates are at grahamelwood.com. All of the venues are requiring proof of vaccination. Dynasty Typewriter on the 18th is also saying you can do negative COVID tests, but check with the venues for what their policies are. I have no control over those policies. Go to grahamelwood.com. Sorry we can't come. This sucks. We'll be back hopefully next year. But if you're in California or want to make the trip, come out to these shows. These are probably the only shows we're going to do this year. Thank you.